Welcome to another episode of 5-5 Sports. I'm Evan Rudenberg, and alongside me this week is Matthew and Daria. There was a pretty hectic wild card week, and we'll break all those six games down for you, and we will preview the not the championship. What do we call the next round? The divisional. We will preview the divisional round coming up in both divisions, but let's start with the first game of last week, Vegas, Cincinnati. Cincinnati, the longest playoff drought in the NFL. They had that record going for them, but Joseph Burrow and the rest of the Bengals broke that curse. They won in the jungle. They beat Vegas in a pretty defensive game, maybe a little more defensive than some were expecting. But how did you see that game playing out, and what do you kind of make of Cincinnati's chances going into the next round?
I remember I think I predicted Cincinnati taking the game, and my main prediction I think was for the fact that I thought just overall Bengals have been a more talented offense all season compared to the Raiders. I think watching the game, I think that's pretty much what happened. I think consistently, even though the game in the end was relatively close with a good score, I think we can all agree that Bengals kind of outplayed the Raiders all game. Like, they are clearly the superior team. They're clearly in control of the game. Raiders had a bit of spark in the end and trying to catch up, and I heard people saying like it could have been different if they didn't blow that whistle and they actually called the play that as they should have. But even so, that doesn't change the fact that throughout most of the game, Bengals were clearly superior team, and Joe Burrow had this being his first game in the playoffs. We see a lot of quarterbacks in the first play matchup. They kind of they only look like a half of what they are. I mean, there are having examples this season, this past weekend where we saw that, but Joe Burrow was not one of the quarterbacks. He connected with his receivers, especially Jamar Chase, really well. The offense looked consistent basically throughout the whole game, and I think on the other side, the Raiders, although they looked good at the end, they really took a long time to get going, and the results there.
Yeah, you have to say Cincinnati did play a great game and throughout. They really had a chip on their shoulder, especially Joe Burrow. You could really tell that there was a sense of momentum that this team was carrying over from the regular season. In terms of the Raiders, I mean, look, they had a hard season. They had a very weird season for that matter, with all the stuff that was going on that we talked about in our preview special. But in this case, it was very interesting to see what Raiders team was kind of like. It was pretty much expected, the type of performance. I think out of all the games, or if one of the games, this was the one that was kind of close and not close to a point where this is the Raiders team, how they've been playing all season. They've been keeping themselves in games, but being at home, the Bengals, and this is the first win in over 30, I think it was 31 years,
Yeah.
which is quite an accomplishment. It was generally a very good game to watch, and the Raiders, although they'll be going home a little bit saddened by this, I think there's a bit of there's an accomplishment to say that, okay, they've made the playoffs. They can possibly do it again next season, with now a new, hopefully I heard they just got rid of their coach. Now they can kind of rebuild this team for next season, or kind of recoup. In terms of the Cincinnati team, it's impressive seeing where they will go now. I believe it's against Tennessee in the next round. So quite an impressive performance all around.
Yeah, the keys for Cincinnati was Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Those two, they see eye to eye. They have that telepathic connection anytime they're on the field. Saw in LSU. Now we're seeing it translate in the NFL, and you rarely see it translate to the NFL as quickly and as seamlessly as they've made that transition. But clearly, it's just two special talents. Jamar Chase is already a top 5 receiver in this league, and Joe Burrow just continues to elevate his status. Clearly, the big moments don't phase him. I should have known the way he was walking into the game. I don't know if you saw him in the tunnel, just dripped out. You just knew there's something different. And maybe if we didn't make predictions Tuesday, maybe if we made predictions Saturday afternoon when I saw him walking in, I would have been a little more hesitant to go with Vegas. But I thought maybe things would go a little bit more way or their way in that game and maybe cause an upset. I mean, and they were in there. They were within striking range, but gone the red zone, couldn't convert. Just too many field goals. That's really killed them. And the offensive line as well. Too many holding penalties. He got to the red zone a few times, especially they're inside the 10, holding, delay of game, just undisciplined penalties. And I mean, we'll talk about the Dallas game in a second, but that's what cost Vegas as well. It's really, both Dallas and Vegas lost in similar ways, but Vegas definitely came in as an underdog, more not they had less to play for, but they definitely had that chip on their shoulder, trying to prove everyone wrong. And that's really been their entire season, but they just couldn't grind it out. They had their opportunities, especially, on the final drive, put it inside the 10, but never really threatened to score at that point. And at the end of the day, Cincinnati they had more talent, they had more desire, and they had a little bit more kind of fight to, squeak that one out and to make sure they didn't continue that 31-year drought that has been plaguing the city for a long, long time.
Where do you think, because you asked this question earlier, how far do you think
Mhm.
Bengals can go? Because personally, I can see them beating Tennessee, but
I can
don't
see them being
beating Bills
Tennessee,
and
but
Kansas City.
I agree with that. But Tennessee's going to be a tricky team, and I feel like we're going to be a little bit blinded by Tennessee coming next week. I think a lot of people are going to be on Cincinnati and on the hype train, but we have to remember Derrick Henry's coming back. That's going to be huge, and it's going to be the X factor in that going to be Ryan Tano, because we know he can be great, but sometimes he'll struggle. So it's about, can he be off the jump getting the Bengals defense right away, because we know the Bengals have an improved defense and they played very well against Vegas, and they really did a good job limiting guys like Darren Waller and Zay Jones, the big threats for Vegas offensively. So I think Tennessee, I mean, look, they got to the number one spot by playing great defense all year. Defensively, they play really well, and they're extremely well coached. Mike Vrabel, we know he's been getting his flowers ever since he beat Bill Belichick a few years ago, the final Tom Brady game. That's really when we started to give Mike Vrabel the credit. And now being the number one seed, coming off a bye, the expectations are high for them. So it's about, can Ryan Tannehill live up to those expectations? Is Derrick Henry going to be healthy? We'll talk about that game in a bit as we get through the rest of the wildcard games, but it's going to be an interesting test for Cincinnati for sure.
I will say, well, last thing on it is that I think there's a lack of experience that I think will influence what happens to them in the rest of this playoff run. Yeah, for the Bengals particularly. And it would have been for the Raiders as well, because both of which have not been in the playoffs for quite a number of years, or it's been very limited for them. So seeing as how that Cincinnati won this game and Joe Burrow finally got his first playoff win, this will be a very good confidence booster going into Tennessee. But again, we'll preview it in a second.
Agreed.
Sure. To the Saturday night game, I know, tougher one for you, New England Buffalo. Wasn't very close. Maybe just a few words on Mac Jones and what maybe we could expect going forward next year, and maybe a word on Buffalo as well.
I would say that this is one of the hardest games I had to watch. Honestly, I think by the end of I think like most Patriot fans in the fourth, that we were I kind of stopped watching, because I was just, it was that hard to take. Look, I have to talk about the Patriots in the negative fashion, but I do want to give some positives to Buffalo, because you know what, like, I'm not a big fan of Buffalo personally, but you know what, I gotta give massive credit, because they came into that game wanting to win more than us. They were powerful. They themselves had a chip on their shoulder. It was just a generally an incredible performance by them, and going forward, this was the game to me that said, all right, this is they got an offense that can really work with it, and a defense as well. I think generally seeing what that team is able to do, they're going to give Kansas City trouble next week. Now, in terms of the Patriots, I saw a lot of people like hating on, what Mac Jones what was happening with him, and with all the defensive problems. And you know what? I'm with it. I knew this team was not going to go far in the playoffs. I think a lot of people did, but I just think people didn't expect it to be this big of a blowout against the Buffalo Bills, which kind of hurt. Though, like, I think there's an experience that this will teach a lot of those players. I mean, look, this is a different team than we saw a few years ago that was in the playoffs with Tom Brady. This is a much more young, in a way, a much more younger, but also more progressive team that is looking to advance in many of its positions. And I think that Bill Belichick knew this going into it. I think he knew that this was not going to be an easy game. So going into next season, there's definitely some changes that need to be made, especially on the defensive end. There's a lot of Pro Bowlers that we do have that, even though the regular season they were great, they didn't turn up for a game that we need them the most. And I would still say there's some offensive options, like we do need to deal with our receiving core. I'm not too keen on it. N'Keal Harry has to go, in my opinion. He hasn't been great this season. I do like Kendrick Bourne, and I do like Hunter Henry, and and Algahor. I don't mind him either. So it's a fine. It's a fine team. This Patriots team is going to build up, I feel. In terms of the loss, we have to take it. It's just one of those games that you gotta, as a Patriot fan, you gotta watch, and it was coming. This type of performance, you could really tell that Buffalo had been really wanting this for a while now. So, being the team that was always behind the Patriots for so many years. So, going forward, I'm optimistic. I am saddened by it, and I was pretty depressed on Sunday morning. But you know what? I think a lot of Patriot fans will understand that this was not a terrible season. It was not what we wanted, but it is a step in the right direction. So going forward, I'm very excited to see what Mac Jones in particular can do as one of the best rookies I've seen this season, and the amount of performances I saw from him, I can really tell he's a star in the making. Hopefully it continues, but we have to see. With Bill Belichick there, I think that there are more positive signs than negatives.
Yeah, this definitely was a positive season because I remember earlier this season, if we all talking about the Patriots, they didn't really have them that high, even making the playoffs, or if they did, barely so, right? Look, for Patriots, you have Mac Jones as good quarterback for future. Of course, he's not going to look at that Brady level or seem to be being that Brady level, but no quarterback in the league is going to be Tom Brady, right? So you definitely have to say if Bill Belichick's coaching, the current roster you have, you guys wouldn't be that playoff threat if Bill Belichick wasn't coach. And your defense they didn't play a great game, but they have shown that they've been a solid defense all season, and they kind of just expand on this team. There's a lot of ways that the Patriots can go about this, and they can really continue, as you said, they can continue to grow in the future and build as a team. I agree with you that they need to really work on their receiving core because just a problem the Patriots had, I think, for a while, even in Brady's last few years. Brady would have a few targets, but he really lacked receivers, especially compared to what he has now with him. But overall, I think the game, though, the biggest thing is that Josh Allen just decided to have an almost perfect game at quarterback against the Patriots. If you look at his stat line, there's almost no flaws to the way he played. The offense was firing on all cylinders, and really the defense didn't let your offense move here. And I predicted last week that if Patriots want to win, they need to kind of figure out exactly how to stop. They won't be being Bills with just outmatching talent, but they have to figure out how to stop the Bills' offense. The Bills tend to basically outmatch them in offense and talent-wise, but they also figure out how to stop the Patriots well. They kind of dominate on both ends, and I think it really showed in the score.
Yeah, the problem was the game was over very early, and I think we have to look at a few factors to why there was. First, Josh Allen. I mean, he's in those top 5-6 quarterbacks of pure talent, arm talent. Could do with his legs. It's kind of like the model for what I think NFL teams now scouting for at the quarterback position. He is that good. I mean, the arm talent's ridiculous. We saw a few throws. The one that really stuck out was to Stephon Diggs when they're up 21-0 end of the half. Just scrambles out of the pocket, throws a bomb on their run, 40 yards, and I mean, just nice little over the shoulder. But the other problem was I think Bill Belichick got not to discredit anything that Bill Belichick has done, but I think a little bit of a creature of habit and it's just the wrong kind of system to play man against Buffalo, because Buffalo will eat up man. We've seen Buffalo do very well against man. I think you have to play, a zone, or, you have to run some blitz, just some different schemes if you're playing Buffalo, because if you try to match up to the man to man, Josh Allen's going to eat that up. Stephon Diggs 1-on-1, he's too good for that, even though it's been a bit of a down year. A 1-on-1, he can do anything. And JC Jackson just looked lost trying to guard him. Dario, I know you've watched a lot of JC Jackson this year, but I think that's the worst we've ever seen him play in a Patriots uniform. So that's just one of the areas I think Bill Belichick got it wrong. But we have to look at the Bills' defense as well. And we talked about them being almost underrated. I think it's the best defense in the league. Man-to-man position, there's no flaw in that pick in the first quarter that Micah Hyde had. Just taking the ball, I think it was from Aguilar took the ball away. Mac Jones threw a dot in the corner of the end zone, and once that pick happened, you could see that the floodgates just started opening for Buffalo. It was cold, it was gross, and they definitely had that game, the wind game, where the Patriots just ran the ball every single play. The Bills couldn't really do anything because it was so windy, and the Bills kind of just had that mindset, and they had and they just had the right game plan on that day. But the wind wasn't as much in the factor; it was just cold. But playing in Buffalo, those players were ready for it. They've been through the playoffs together. It's now their third rodeo with really that core group, and the defense is getting better and better. I think it was just a mismatch for the Patriots. I thought maybe they would, if they could stop them in the first half, it'd be a close game. But once they started putting up the points, you knew it would be a little bit ugly for the Patriots. But it's not to say anything about the Patriots' future. We know Mac Jones will get better, but now the questions will be starting, or we will start to ask the questions about Mac Jones going forward. Rookie year is now over. Now he has to keep improving. So it's going to be a tough task for him because we have to see a little bit. I think we need more arm talent from him. I don't think we've seen, the full extent of his range and the strength that he can kind of utilize. And we saw a little bit more of that in Alabama. Obviously, the NFL, it's a tough transition. We know Bill Belichick is a bit more of a conservative, pragmatic coach. So the Patriots are going to have to find ways to win going forward because great season. That 7-game win streak really propelled them and started giving them hope for the future. Started, give them, made them start to reminisce about the big bad days of Belichick and Brady. But obviously, they're not there yet. Defensively, they will have to retool a little bit. They will have to improve in some key areas. Maybe change up the scheme for next year. But we'll see. You can never really discount anything with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. But it was an ugly game to watch and. Unfortunately for Patriots fans, maybe fortunately for the rest of America and the NFL, the Patriots, for the first time in a long time under Phil Belichick, got embarrassed on national television. But it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone. So Buffalo is a good team, and it'll be a good game next week against the Chiefs. That's the game I'm looking forward to the most.
Any last words from the Patriots fan?
I feel like you were waiting to say that, Evan. I feel like you were waiting to say about the Patriots being embarrassed. Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, they were. I mean,
yeah,
we can't really hide from the facts. So, I mean, they've embarrassed, many teams for the last 2 decades. So
there's a little grit at the end, though. That really.
Yeah, no, that's a grit. I saw that too. No, but
it is the pains of the Cowboys game on Sunday. So I can't really be too happy about anything.
No, but you're right though. No, we did get embarrassed, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of questions to be asked about going forward. And I like what you said about what is going to be the future for Mac Jones.
When an offense, sorry, just to go on Buffalo, when an offense has a perfect game, I mean, a lot of questions have to be asked on the defense. I mean, no punts, no field goals. Every single drive was a touchdown, except for I think the final drive where they took a knee. But I mean, you can't really count that. It was really just an offensive display from Buffalo. Defensively, they had their New England's number. God, my mind's going to like 4 different teams at the moment for some reason. But with New England, they definitely need another offensive weapon because they don't really have a star. It was definitely they played by commission, and it was next man up for New England. There's never really a set guy week to week. It was maybe 1 week Rondale Stevenson, the running back. Next week it was Kendrick Bourne. Next week it was also Aguilar making a few plays, but it was never really a guy you could rely on. So New England definitely needs someone like that. We know how long they relied on Edelman for years. Maybe probably a different profile of receiver, but definitely they need to bring in someone that could help Mac Jones and really give him a number 1 target to consistently kind of maybe bail him out of some situations.
Yeah, I think it's always really hard to replace players like you had Gronk and when you had Edelman. So going forward, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what this team does going forward. And
definitely not the same caliber of offense we saw 3-4 years ago. And that's also what I think New England fans may be jumping the boat on Mac Jones. So now it's kind of like that reset where
And let's be honest, we were spoiled as Patriot fans. We were spoiled because we had an incredible offense going forward. Now, again, I actually do think that this offseason will be very, very important for this team going forward and seeing what the retooling actually means for this team. But again, as you said, should be interesting to see where we go forward with this and see how Mac Jones progresses as a player.
I mean, you mentioned though, like receivers, like they had, like I'm thinking receivers had like the past decade, like Julian Edelman and like Wes Welker. Like, they're very catered. They're very catered to the way Brady played, quarterback. So I think you need to find some that kind of matches Mac Jones style. I don't know if we've seen what Mac Jones style as quarterback is yet because he's so like ingrained into Bill Belichick's system, which I mean, again, Bill Belichick's system tends to work, but you gotta kind of see him grow on his own as a quarterback as well, and see really kind of how he develops and the way he is able to target his receivers.
The only player that I would say so far that has actually been that player for me is Kendrick Bourne. Actually, I think he's been fantastic this season.
He's being your best offensive player for sure.
By far, and I think he will be a weapon going forward for this team. The others, not so sure yet, but again, time will only tell.
Sure. I think the next game we could, maybe say a brief word. Philadelphia Tampa is just really a great team beating up on a not very good team.
I mean, look, no one came to this game. Like from the three of us, neither of us came in saying that we had the Eagles winning. I remember.
I thought Philadelphia would keep it close in the first half. I just knowing the weather in Tampa Bay, I thought it'd be windier, but it was windy in Tampa. But yeah, Philadelphia's defense, they did have their moments. They get I'm stuttering here. They did get a lot of pressure on Tom Brady. I thought after the first 2 touchdowns that they gave up. But by then, Jalen Hurts, you can't really throw in Tampa Bay's defense. We have to remember, it wasn't the offense that won the Super Bowl last year. It was the defense that shut down Mahomes and shut down Green Bay and shut down everyone else on the way to their playoff or on their way to their Super Bowl victory.
Look, the Eagles, we talked about last week, they had a good season. They had far better. I think they've surpassed what people were expecting of them. And Jalen Hurts had, as his first full season, he did a good job at quarterback for a very hard fan base to play for. Me speaking for the fan base of Philadelphia, I've experienced as a hockey fan. Mm-hmm. But I think the talent outmatch just showed both on offense and defense. Tampa Bay is, by every means, even with the injury to have, is their probably a superior team to Eagles, and that completely showed.
Yeah, honestly, there wasn't much to say. I think, as you said in the previous preview, we guessed this was going to happen. I don't think anyone was surprised when we saw the result. Tom Brady continues on his legacy at the moment with Tampa Bay and as a player in general. And there's not much to say. I mean, Philadelphia are going out, and going forward, Tampa Bay should be interesting to see this season. They're always in the playoffs. Tom Brady really does fire it up during the postseason, so we'll have to see where he goes from here.
Yeah. All right, the fun one, the Sunday afternoon game, the one on Nickelodeon, San Francisco, Dallas. It's a brutal game from a Dallas point of view. I'll let you guys speak on it first, but yeah, ugly football.
Very similar to like the Raiders and Bengals game, where even though the score wasn't that far off. You tell me if you disagree, but I think 49ers completely controlled that game.
Oh, I mean, I watched that game. There's no disagreement there.
Okay. Well,
none.
Look, I hear people talking about the ending with Dak and the run, the referee.
The ridiculous.
That's not the reason why.
Ridiculous how much focus was on that play. Maybe because it was as just brain dead as a play call can get in that situation. But I mean, the whole game was like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very messy game in general. Like I have not, out of all the wildcard games, it was really crazy and very frantic from the off. So yeah, I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest.
So look, I said this in the beginning of the season. I remember we talked about this on Spirit Live. I said I liked how the Cowboys looked early in the season. I like how they were winning games. But what worries me is if they don't have a game, I don't trust Mike McCarthy as a coach to bring them out. I think you always agree with me on this. And that's where having Mike McCarthy was being outcoached by Kyle Shanahan all game.
Mm-hmm.
Mike McCarthy, when it mattered most, when they need to, we know his time management is one of the worst probably in the NFL. And when it came pressure for Cowboys to make that comeback, honestly, as coach, he didn't deliver. And, call the wrong plays, didn't manage time well. And, that again, the doctor brings up again, but Dak went for that run when he really shouldn't have. And then the game kind of ended in that bit of a mess, And, we talked about this last week as well. I was kind of giving credit to on Diggs, and you told me that you think that we overhyped him a little bit, and I think this game kind of proved you're right because he really did leave his receivers open quite a bit, and 49ers. Credit to Jimmy Garoppolo. We criticized him pretty heavily last week as well, but him and his offense. He didn't have the most to do because there are definitely a lot more offense pieces on the 49ers, but he played a solid game, and of course, when you got people like Deebo Samuel. You got Elijah Mitchell kind of also carrying the load. That offense just worked together well in the whole, and compared to the Cowboys defense, which kind of fell short to where they usually were this season.
Yeah, the thing is too, I thought the biggest problem with Dallas is in this game, and particularly I don't know, they've done this before this season, is that they lost control of the game very early on. I mean, they were already losing within the very early on in this game.
Yeah.
Now we have to give credit to San Fran. I do think, like, I don't actually think Jimmy G was at his best against Dallas. I do think though his offense was fantastic. I think Deebo Samuel had one of the best games of personally his career with San Fran. And going forward, this team was interesting. They reminded me a lot of how they played when they went to the Super Bowl a few years ago against Kansas City. So they had that kind of momentum going forward with them, and as they have been in the second half of this regular season. So yeah, look, it was an absolutely weird game, very entertaining, I have to say. And it all comes down to some poor play calling by Mike McCarthy, in particular the very last play with Dak deciding to run, in my opinion, which was a really strange decision considering where they were and how they kind of fought back. I honestly thought their Dallas being able to rally in the second half was quite impressive. And when you have a player like Dak Prescott and you have Amari Cooper and and Ezekiel Elliott, and your defense wasn't doing too bad in that second half. It seemed like they were turning things around, and then it seemed like a few bad plays were kind of chosen by Mike McCarthy that just I was scratching my head at. I was like, why are you doing that? It seems very bizarre. It was, but to be fair, it was a very frantic game, and I don't think either team was phenomenal on the day. I think there were some few standout performances, but in particular Deebo Samuel. But going forward, it was interesting to see what this 49ers team looks like when their offense is together, when they have a somewhat fit Jimmy Garoppolo going forward. And I've had, as you said, we had our gripes on him, especially myself. But you know what? He's a leader for that team right now. One of the leaders in that team for sure. And going forward, it should be interesting to see how they progress, especially when they go against Green Bay.
That game made it quite apparent that the Cowboys, there's one problem that they don't have, and that's talent. Just about everything else is a problem. Coaching's a problem, ownership's a problem, discipline's a problem, ego's a problem. Discipline's a problem. I mean, but an undisciplined performance. 14 penalties, setting a team record. I mean, it's pretty impressive. Embarrassingly impressive, but I mean, impressive nonetheless to get 14 penalties. The offensive line was a joke. That's where they have to revamp in the offseason. Ezekiel Elliott's finished. I would get rid of him so quickly. It's not even funny. I'm telling you, Pollard's Scooby future. Ezekiel Elliott has done nothing for the last 3 years, and he is just a bum at this point. I don't see anything to do with Ezekiel Elliott ever again. Secondary is awful for Dallas, other than Trayvon Diggs, who gets beat one-on-one way too often, especially when you have speedsters like Deebo Samuel. Not good enough. Yeah, guys like Anthony Brown aren't good enough. Javon Curse, Jordan Lewis, all those guys just not good enough. You're not going to Super Bowl with those three in the secondary. But with all that being said, Dallas still should have won the game. They played as badly as they could have possibly played in a playoff game. Offense was non-existent. Dak Prescott looked bad, but I think that was less to do with Dak Prescott and more to do with the offensive line collapsing in 2.5 seconds every play. More to do with the fact that Dallas offensive line just couldn't keep any discipline whatsoever, holding here, holding there. Connor Williams with the hold. I'm thinking Lael Collins had a few holds, Randy Gregory on the defensive side. I mean, especially in the last 2 minutes on third down. I don't know if he thought the offensive line had the ball. I don't know what he was thinking. I think what play I'm telling by Matthew. There's a 3rd and 10 play. They have one timeout left, and just give him a first down. Why not? I mean, the fact that Mike McCarthy's staying next year, I have zero expectation for the Cowboys. There is a 0% chance they win a playoff game next year. It is actually, no, I think that's a little too high. I think they have a negative 5% of winning a playoff game next year. It's just, I don't know if Jerry Jones has dementia. I don't know if someone drugged him before the game. I don't know if someone's drugged him over the last 10 years. I don't know if he watched Jason Garrett over the last 10 years underperform and fail in coaching situations constantly. Mike McCarthy situationally is worse than Jason Garrett's. I think he had slightly better play calling, slightly better play calling, but it was just a complete joke for Mike McCarthy. You have to, I mean, you get paid to have your team ready to play in the biggest occasion of the season, and that's the performance you gave. I don't know why he looked for Cedric Wilson every play when you have Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, the most talented route runners in the league. Nothing of that game made sense from a Cowboys point of view. If I was coach, I could have definitely won that game over Mike McCarthy. If Dyer was head coach, he could have won that game over Mike McCarthy. And if Matthew, you're the head coach, you would have at least done a better performance. The fact that he, before he was hired for the Cowboys, he said he locked himself in his basement watching analytics. I mean, every analytic book in the world can tell you don't run a QB draw with 14 seconds from the 40-yard line with no timeouts. I mean, that's just as stupid as it gets. And then just to have the audacity to then back it up in the press conference, say we'd run it again, or the analytics told us it's the right play and we stand by it. I'm like, you're a clown. Any Cowboys fan blaming the refs maybe, gave the Cowboys 2 or 3, soft, calls, against them. But the reality is there's no issue with the refs. I don't know what you expect the ref to do when he had to run, 30 yards to to tap the ball. I mean, I don't know if Dak didn't know the rules, giving the ball to the center. I don't know how you can complain about that. It was just brain dead coaching. They weren't unprepared. They're unprepared for the situation. That doesn't happen if it happens to Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. It doesn't happen to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. That doesn't happen to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. It does not happen to Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay in the LA Rams. It does not happen to any serious team that is well coached and disciplined. Cowboys are none of that. And the fact that Mike McCarthy has the audacity the next day to watch that game, to sit there for 3.5 hours and not see the problem is just absolutely mind-boggling. I would have fired him in the fourth quarter, let alone after the game. I'm speechless. I have no words left for Jerry Jones. I have no words left for Mike McCarthy. I'd fire him. I'd fire Kellen Moore and promote Dan Quinn, but that's not going to happen. So I'm lost for words. And it's just the same nonsense. It's going to cost them. It's just entitlement of, I can't tell you how many times I've counted Cowboys players blaming the refs. Look at yourselves in the mirror. Dari, we could honestly, it's such a similar comparison to Man United. Different structure and different, way football and soccer is run in Europe just because of just the way the leagues are kind of built. It's a different structure overall. There's no playoff, but same kind of idea of, entitlement, ego, living in the past. And that's where the Cowboys are, and they're not going to get better. It's going to get worse before it gets better, as long as Clown McCarthy is the head coach of this team.
I think I said something got hired. I never bought into the Mike McCarthy getting hired. Like, I remember a lot of them were happy because
I thought maybe, but I should have realized that Jerry Jones is just as dumb as it gets at this point of his life.
Yeah.
Let me ask this actually. Sorry, what do you think about him staying another season? Because I believe that's confirmed that
I'm not watching them next year. I'll throw them on Red. If they happen to be on Red Zone, I'll watch them. But they're not going to win a playoff game. 0% chance. Negative 0% chance. It's not happening. Not with Mike McCarthy. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's the problem, because in the playoffs,
nothing's going to change. If you don't get rid of the coach, the owners were really stars, but the owner can replace the coach. So that's where it starts, and it's not going to get better. I'm not going to blindly believe something that's just ludicrous to believe. I'm not living in La La Land over here. I'm living in reality, and the reality is Mike McCarthy won one Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, the greatest quarterback of all time. I don't know what he expects to do with Dak Prescott. I don't know what Jerry Jones expects him to do with Dak Prescott. Analytics, the guy is as analytically clueless as a parrot. Just embarrassing. A giraffe knows more analytics than Mike McCarthy.
I mean, look, the Cowboys, they haven't been,
look at the talent on that roster. There's no excuse. The talent on that roster, there's no excuse. Why was Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb targeted maybe a combined 6 times and Cedric Wilson gets? I don't understand. I don't understand the logic behind it. I mean, injuries aren't really a factor. Maybe, you lost Michael Gallup, the third right. It's just injuries happen. It's just not good enough. It was just a pathetic game to watch. They never looked like winning, and just because they made a slight fourth quarter comeback, and then again shot themselves in the foot with penalties. I mean, they had every chance to win that game. San Francisco gave them every chance to win that game. San Francisco's not a good football team. They have a few good weapons. They're well coached on defense, and they have a great head coach who can come up with different schemes. They're gonna get blown out by Green Bay. It's gonna be a 30-point loss for San Francisco. It's not gonna be a close matchup. We'll talk about the matchup in a second, but it's not gonna be close. They're not a good football team. Dallas is just even worse.
Yeah, you keep seeing the words on my to my study sense, so I think I'm tapped out as well.
Yep. Okay, quickly. Let's move on to Pittsburgh, Kansas City. Big Ben's retirement, not really close. Chiefs did what we expected. Slightly slow start, but after the first quarter, piled it on and sent Big Ben into retirement.
I mean, it kind of similar to the Eagles campaign. This game kind of turned out, I think, as we all expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, did Big Ben play his worst game we've seen from this season? No, but it's kind of what the Big Ben we saw. He's just not the same quarterback that he used to be. No disrespect to him as a career, because he is, I said last week, he is one of the best quarterbacks playing definitely in the late 2000s, like early 2010s. He's been like one of those dominant quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But he's not. The team is just not the Pittsburgh Steelers it was. It wasn't the Pittsburgh Steelers it was a few years ago. The team's of course the defense is a high point, but they were enough to stop that Kansas State offense, which is one of the best offenses in the league. I think just everything about that game kind of summed up what both teams were. Kind of very similar to the Eagles and the was just a talent mismatch. Steelers, did they? I never bought Steelers really deserving to be in the playoffs, but they made it. They had a definite season good enough to be in the playoffs because all things considering compared to our teams that are there, and in the end they were clearly the worst team, and then they lost to one of what I think is still one of the best teams in the AFC. Them next to Buffalo.
Yeah, I do agree to an extent. Like, I do think that this is one of those like Tampa that it was kind of already given what the result would be by even before the game started. I have to say that Pittsburgh did surprise me in this game. Being a tie game, I was wondering maybe there's a chance of them actually doing something against this Kansas City team, and scoring that pick six was definitely a big confidence booster. But it seems like they kind of capitulated after that. And when you have Mahomes on your team, it's really hard to match up against a player like him. And going forward, this is kind of it ended up becoming the result we all expected. Big Ben retiring, he's one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, if I'm honest. Quite crazy his career, and he will be. I know some fans here, some people in particular, won't be missed. But he will be missed in a general as a neutral football fan. And going forward, it should be interesting. This Kansas City team is looking great right now. They are really hot, and it's brewing up for something big against Buffalo next week.
And I think that's what we saw in the game, because
we saw that game was really sorry.
Like you said, the Steelers defense was playing well at first, and then they got the pick six and they had that momentum. But once the Chiefs gained momentum on their offense, that's not a team that you easily stop. And I think we saw early in the season, we see it basically every game you play. Once that offense gets going, it's kind of hard to contain Mahomes and the weapons that he has.
Yeah, I mean, you guys both mentioned the pick six. I also had the pick early on when they were marching. I mean, that's just really the story of the Steelers season. Big Ben are like 20 yards at half, and they're up 7-0, or they're went into the half tied 7-7. It's just, Steelers defense kept them in so many games, and just the Chiefs are a different animal. It's never going to be easy for the Steelers. Probably was never going to be close, and Chiefs once they got going. Quickly, let's pivot to the final game: the Rams Cardinals. Another blowout. The Cardinals haven't looked good for weeks, and that game really was a statement from the Rams.
Look, it wasn't a great game for Cardinals, but we've seen young quarterbacks have in the first playoff games have terrible games, and I think that's just what the case was for Kyler Murray. He is going to have a great future in the NFL. He is a great quarterback, great talented young quarterback. I don't think there's really any question to the amount of talent that he has. But he looked unready to be in the playoffs. He looked very inexperienced. I think I would agree on that. And Rams kind of the story for a lot of games this weekend, but the Rams just looked like they had complete control of the game. The talent team kind of outmatched. Stafford, he didn't even have to do much, but the amount he did was near perfect. I think he really had a misstep, and
well said.
That defense really just shut down the entire Cardinals offense. The Cardinals, I think their offensive line really couldn't stop anything from the defensive line, the Rams, and they just completely got dominated. Is it was a disappointing how unclose this game was. Yes, because I think this was a game a lot of people were kind of most excited for when just looking at the matchups. But also in another way, like I said, it's not completely surprising because of how young Kyler Murray is and how inexperienced he is in the playoffs and how inexperienced the Cardinals as a whole are in the playoffs. Because really haven't happened known to be a playoff threat for many years now. So I think in the future, I said this last week, I think Cardinals will continue to grow to be a playoff team. They'll continuously like be a threat. I think it will take some time before they kind of become serious contenders. But this is kind of just a rough start for them. And it kind of reminds me of, honestly, Lamar Jackson's first playoff game a few years ago against the Chargers, where, of course, we see Lamar kind of stepping into that position as a star player, but in his first playoff game doesn't really deliver. And Kyle Murray is a very similar type of quarterback to Lamar Jackson. If defenses can figure out the way how he plays, they can really limit him. So now in the coming years, he has to kind of change his game, then kind of see where in his game he can grow, because there's definitely areas he can grow in the way he plays.
Yeah, no, I this was one of those games I was very surprised to see how it, how far stretch it was, but between both teams and the caliber between both. I really did think Arizona should have been by the way they started the season, they were very promising going forward with Kyler Murray and that offense in general. But I think this is a testament to how good this Rams team really is. I mean, they just have the depth of it's quite incredible. You have a really constantly consistent quarterback in Stafford, and you have an incredible receiving core that was with one of the possible MVPs this season in Cooper Kupp, and of course you have Odell Beckham Jr., who's been playing great great since he's gone on to the Rams. This was one of those where you could see that where we saw other teams like the Bills having a higher momentum or a bigger momentum going forward into the postseason. This was the opposite effect, I feel, for Arizona going into this game. Going forward, this is, to be honest, from the start of the season, the Rams were my Super Bowl pick personally. So seeing this team kind of energized and seeing how dominant they were against that Arizona team and not allowing Kyler Murray to really do what he does best, I think says a lot about him. Says a lot about what this team has got to go through in the last year or so to kind of become this way. Especially, they are missing a few pieces, in particular, or someone like Robert Woods who was a consistent receiver for them, an experienced receiver for that. So going forward, this was definitely an impressive performance again from the Rams, and to me, this was a statement of, oh yeah, we're coming. We are in this race for the Super Bowl, and it should be interesting to see what they do next week.
Yeah, I think when we did the pod last week, I think I said the Cardinals would keep it close, and then as the week got later, and then we got into Sunday, I watched more tape on them, and I think when he did the pod, the game against the Cowboys was kind of fresh in my memory, kind of being the most recent full game I watched of Arizona, outside of the Week 17 game where they lost, but without Hopkins, that team struggled. And teams try. I mean, there's a direct correlation to when that offense started to struggle and when Hopkins went out. And when you take away that kind of weapon from Kyler Murray, obviously it's going to be more difficult. But I mean, that game was won and lost with that Rams defense, especially that defensive line. You have to double team Aaron Donald. That leaves Leonard Floyd one-on-one on the other side, and that leaves Von Miller one-on-one on one of the other edges. And then the rest of the defense. I mean, the Rams have the number one statistical defense, and I think they rival Buffalo. For defense, I think Buffalo's a better secondary, slightly, but I think the Rams D line is definitely the best in football. And the first half was just as big of an indication to where the two teams are. One has a lot of veterans, being to the playoffs, got a lot more damage, just more talented on both sides of the football, and that's really what the Rams were. I think Stafford didn't have to do much, but Sean McVay ran a few play action for him, got them deep, got them going downfield. Arizona's defense was slow, it was sluggish. They weren't prepared. The run game, Cam Akers always had 7-8 yards. The offensive line gave him so many good gaps. Him and Sony Michel, but especially Cam Akers coming off the ACL. Just a quick word on him. What a phenomenal story. What a phenomenal way to come back after 6 months, tearing your ACL, to do that in a playoff game. And look, and honestly, be the best player on both sides of the ball on offense. So credit to him. Also have to say, hope Buda Baker's okay, because that was an ugly hit we saw. I mean, that was as bad as a hit. I obviously I don't think there's any fault or any ill intention from Cam Akers, but just hoping Buda Baker's okay because one of the better safeties in the league, and just that was a devastating hit, helmet to helmet. So hopefully he's okay, but the Rams, they're going to be a test. We were talking, Troy, I know earlier on Spirit Live, maybe halfway through the season, is Matthew Stafford the real deal? Can he lift team to Super Bowl? I don't necessarily, it's all on him. I just think the genius of Sean McVay, the offensive weapons they have, it's going to be about him executing. I don't think he's going to have to do anything extreme. I don't think he's going to have to, do anything crazy to propel this team into the Super Bowl, as we saw, Sean McVay do with Jared Goff, much lesser talent, but wow, did the Rams look good? And it's going to be a test for the Buccaneers. That's all I'll say. But the Rams are good.
Speaking of Stafford, I think I've always said this. I think Stafford was very underrated in Detroit because he didn't have much to work on a team and the way he played. I think he kind of didn't get as much appreciation as he deserved as the quarterback of the Lions.
Yeah, okay.
But I think people also tend to overrate him a bit when he first got the Rams, thinking that he would be
kind of that
hero to bring the Rams back.
But I think there's that balance. I think I think people understood that Matthew Stafford wasn't a problem in Detroit. Let's be honest. Look, he was the one throwing Calvin Johnson all those years. And Calvin Johnson isn't the same, although uberly talented, he's not the same player without a very good quarterback by his side. We see all great receivers have a great quarterback. Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, for example, the best duo to ever do it. So it's not to discredit Matthew Stafford. I think he's without flaws or without faults. Obviously not. I think sometimes he's erratic, sometimes he misses his throw, but didn't have to do anything especially. It's just the holes I gave up. And the one real weakness, the linebacker Jordan Hicks, the amount of times just one-on-one that guy was beat for speed by either Odell Beckham or Cam Akers, it was quite ridiculous. So that's where the game was truly, truly lost, just in the middle of the field for Arizona. They could not contain the Rams if they tried, but we'll preview the upcoming games, including the Rams, but they are a special team. Like, outside of forget, talking about, you need a quarterback to win. Everything else, there's no flaw. There's not a flaw in that team. And that's what that's what I saw yesterday, just a flawless team. But going on to the divisional round, what is the first game? The Saturday at 4:30. Is it Green Bay? Is it the Green Bay game? So you could pull up a schedule.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the NFC games first on Saturday, or is it the Tennessee Cincinnati must be the first one, actually, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay. Tennessee Cincinnati. We talked a little bit about that game earlier when we talked about Cincy, Tennessee, the number 1 seed, getting Derrick Henry back in the lineup. What do you guys see happening?
I can definitely see this being a close game. Like we said, with Derrick Henry back in line, that makes a huge difference. And even while Derrick Henry, they haven't played well in the season. Surprised because a lot of people thought they'd be in a bit of trouble while Derrick Henry, but they've everyone else on the team really stepped up during that time, and that's why they got the first seed. I just think that with the momentum that they have, I do give a small edge to Bengals. I think the way Joe Burrow's been playing is I think he can go a little farther than he is now. I put a bit more doubt earlier, in last week. I think I thought maybe they'll beat the Raiders, but then they'll kind of stop there. But watching that game, there's definitely just this momentum that there is at a team with Burrow, with Jamar Chase, and there's kind of this belief that the Bengals can go far. I don't want to see this happen because I'd rather see the Bengals out immediately as a Ravens fan, but you can't deny there is talent there. I don't think it's definitively the Bengals win, because it definitely will be a close game because there's a lot of talent on the Titans, but I think I'll give the edge to Bengals.
Yeah, for me, it's weird because I haven't really been a fan of Tennessee this season. I know they're obviously first in the AFC, but I haven't actually thought they were been that fantastic this season. I think they've had some great results. Don't get me wrong, but I haven't been overly impressed with them. And going into a playoff game against the Bengals, where a team where we were talking about has kind of has impressed us. It's tricky because I think the Titans have a great home record. I think a 7-2 or something like that. It's a good home record, and they're playing against a Bengals team that's hot. Now, I want to say that the Bengals are going to come in and beat Tennessee. I think
Yeah.
that's it, to me that's the momentum. Everything in my opinion points to that. But I think people are going to sleep on Tennessee, and I think that's the issue. I think that's the issue with this game, and that's what they've been doing all season. They've been quietly going about their business and making themselves one of the best teams in the NFL, even though they haven't been overly impressive. Which I'm not sure if it completely makes sense, but this game
Yeah.
is a tricky one. It is really tricky. I do think it's gonna be close. I do think with Derrick Henry coming in, Titans do have a very they do strengthen that already great, pretty good offense. So I do think the Titans will edge this. However, I think the Bengals will give them a run for their money. I think this is gonna be a really entertaining game, and but I do think the Titans will come out of this.
It's tough. It's tough because I liked a lot of what Cincinnati did last week. When I look at teams coming off a bye in the playoffs, I look at two things. Were they hot before they got in the playoffs? Were they riding a hot streak and they had to sit and now they have to get back into action, or are they kind of just not playing at their best, kind of getting through a few games. Maybe they had a loss or two at the end of the season. Maybe a few injuries creeped in, but with Tennessee, I think the bye week is just perfect for them because then they get Derrick Henry back, give him an extra week, and it's a team of experience. And I think what's going to benefit is going to benefit the Titans is the fact that they're going to be able to use Derrick Henry a lot. He's going to be fresh. They can give him the ball 20, 25 times. And Cincinnati just hasn't dealt with a player like Derrick Henry. And I mean, it's not just a run game you have to worry about. You have to worry about AJ Brown. You have to worry about Julio Jones. You have to worry about, tight ends, Anthony Firkser. We talked about Mike Vrabel being, a great head coach. He'll find schemes. He can run a lot of play action. He can run that behind a great offensive line. And they got in there similar to how the Dallas Cowboys got in there in 2014. The Dak or not the 20. I think I'm thinking of 2016 when Zeke was in his prime and Dak Prescott, was doing his thing, and they had Des Bryant. They similar kind of build the team has. The only difference is great defense. Tennessee, they don't have the best defense in the league, but they have a very sound, solid defense. They don't make many mistakes. They're very good at situational football. And for those reasons, I think Tennessee edges this game. I think it's close, especially if Tennessee gets out to an early lead. I think Cincinnati will have the tools and they have the ability to play from behind because they didn't really have to do that. But we've seen time and time again, they trailing the Chargers earlier this year. They can throw the ball, and they have multiple weapons. It's now just about execution for Tennessee. It's about shutting down basically Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. If you could do that, you have a great chance to win. Obviously, it's easier said than done. I just think the threat of having Derrick Henry and the way Tennessee play, they're going to be able to eat a lot of clock. If they're able to get Derrick Henry heavily involved early, and if he has a good game, I don't think Cincinnati has a defensive line capable to consistently stop Derrick Henry. And even if you overload the middle of the field, or if you overload and you try to overprotect Derrick Henry, you're vulnerable one-on-one with guys like AJ Brown and Julio Jones. I like the way Tennessee are kind of built. I like the way Mike Vrabel built his team, and you can really see like his influence on the side. So I have to go with Tennessee because I do like the timing of the bye week. I do like the way they're coached, and I do like the fact that they're going to have a monster to unleash in Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I do agree with you to a lot of what you said. I really think that this game will kind of come down to Tennessee, the way they play. They run a lot of clock, and then they'll try to get those early leads in. But the way Bengals play also happens to be, they are the type of team that will try to make a comeback. If they're down, they have the.
It's hard to discount either team because they could both play in different styles depending on the way the game. Obviously, they'll both have their game plan. We know Tennessee loves to run the ball, so we know what Tennessee's initial game plan is going to be, and we know Cincinnati is going to try to get Joe Mixon involved, and they're not going to try to overdo themselves early on because Cincinnati knows they don't have to play out of their skin or they have to do anything extraordinary to to beat a team like Tennessee because Cincinnati has a talent. It's not like they have to do anything, out of their own abilities to win this game, but they have to play up to a level that Tennessee has been at. Tennessee gets the best out of their team every single week. So now it's about Cincinnati reaching their top level every play. And in the playoffs was tough because, we saw Arizona struggle. A lot of their team was making their first, playoff appearance. And Cincinnati's, young. And I think Cincinnati benefited from getting to play another inexperienced playoff team in Vegas. And we saw that inexperience in that game, a lot of field goals for both teams. Cincinnati also wasn't able to consistently get in the red zone when they had their opportunities, a lot of field goals for both of those teams in that game. So I like Tennessee's experience. I give Mike Vrabel the edge over Zach Taylor, and I think coaching obviously always plays a factor in the NFL. But just for those reasons, I think it's going to be close. If Tennessee gets out to an early lead, I think they have enough to kind of maintain that pace and not to kind of give up anything too extreme if they do end up with a big lead going into this third or fourth quarter. Second game, can we get a fact check on that? I'm not sure the order of the game is like Green Bay.
Green Bay, yeah.
So Green Bay versus the Niners, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How do you guys see Green Bay versus San Francisco going? I can only see it going one way. That's in Ron's direction, but maybe you have a different opinion.
I mean, look, I do want to give more credit to the 49ers guy. Are they the top two teams in the playoffs? No, but are they overall a good team? I personally think so. I think they have a lot of pieces that make a team, and because they're coached by Kyle Shanahan, it kind of elevates the roster they have. But in my opinion, they're not beating Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers alone, first of all, is just he every year he just keeps playing at another level. And I think a couple years ago he had one of his more lower scoring years, and people thought maybe this is kind of near the end of his reign as one of the best QBs in the league. But I think he immediately proved that wrong. I think, not only does he have Devontae Adams, but he is making his other receivers weapons too. He is that type of quarterback that can kind of really use anyone around him, even if he doesn't have the most elite core of our receivers. He could kind of use what he has, and the defense I think has. Let me mention this earlier in the year as well. Defense has been kind of also contributing more than they have in the previous years. I think a lot of pieces kind of are just working in towards the Packers' favor, and because they're being led by quarterback and Rodgers, because they're such a well-coached team, I think not only are they, I think, going to be the 49ers, I think they are, between them and the Rams, I think they could really go to the Super Bowl, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is the season that if the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl, it's the season. Really, I think they just have such a strong team. And, look, I'm going to give some credit. This 49ers team didn't look all that bad, in my opinion, against the Cowboys. You could argue it was a messy game. Going into there, going to Lambeau Field, with a perfect home record, it's going to be a tough ask for them, especially in the cold. And, there's a lot of factors going against them. I'm going to be honest. I do edge it, not edge it. I do give it to Green Bay with a sizable, with a decent lead. But I don't want people to count out the 49ers this season. I know I'm not a big fan of them myself, but they have with Jimmy Garoppolo and you have Deebo Samuel playing the way they did last week. That was a sign, in my opinion, that they're not going to be a pushover. In my opinion, I do think Green Bay is going to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be as easy of a task as people make it out to be. Going forward, though, yeah, it should be a win for Green Bay, and they really are a hot team going forward right now. They are, well, like the Rams, as you said, they can really challenge for the Super Bowl this season.
I see a big problem with what both of you guys said. You guys made two different statements. One, I do worry about San Francisco's defense, especially I don't think Nick Bosa is going to play, and I don't think Fred Warner is going to play. I don't know what the status was for Fred Warner. It looked quite bad. The injury, I haven't really followed up on that since I just haven't cared to follow up on anything of that Dallas game. But I know Nick Bosa has a concussion. I don't think he'll be ready. Maybe he will be. I don't know the NFL protocols when it comes to concussion, but
it changes a lot.
It does change. So, I mean, maybe we'll be healthy, even, with Nick Bosa. If Fred Warner doesn't play, I mean, it eliminates all the chance. I just don't think San Francisco has enough offensive weapons to disrupt Green Bay defensively. Green Bay has a much better secondary than Dallas does. So Deebo Samuel I don't think he's going to have as many opportunities to make those catches. And Green Bay's run defense is also a lot better. So I think they'll be prepared for the schemes that Kyle Shanahan is gonna have for that Packers defense. I think Dallas really gave them just a great blueprint to win. I think Green Bay wins by at least 20 points. I don't think it's close. I think Green Bay could honestly win by 40. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. San Francisco's not a good team. They're good, but they're just not Green Bay's level. And with a quarterback like Garoppolo, it's just Dallas allowed San Francisco to win that game. Green Bay's not gonna allow that to happen. There's more disciplined. You don't have Mike McCarthy as the head coach anymore. It's a big factor. So it's going to be a blowout, and Green Bay will be moving on to the NFC Championship game. You can put your life savings on that. I have absolutely no confidence that the 49ers are going to have any chance to beat the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers is basically destined to at least make the Super Bowl.
Those agreement here. We all chose the Packers, so there's no disagreement.
That's true. So we're all in the Packers. This is a tough one. The Rams versus the Tom Brady led Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. What do you guys see happening?
This one's hard because if you asked me like early in the season,
it's two very good teams.
Yeah,
very good teams.
Early in the season, I would have definitely picked the Rams. At the halfway point after Rodgers' injury, I would definitely pick the Buccaneers. But Rams, they really proved themselves again in the later half of the season in yesterday's game against the Cardinals. Like they really kind of showed that even though they did have that bit of misstep when they lost Rodgers and then they replaced with Odell Beckham and they got Von Miller. Like there definitely was a chemistry issue in those 2 weeks. But I think they really kind of fixed that and corrected themselves. But it's still the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. And even Fournette, Fournette's not playing next week, is he? Do you know? Do you know if Fournette's playing?
No idea.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I don't know about Fournette and Godwin. Those are really the big questions for Tampa Bay. The other big question for Tampa Bay is offensive line. They lost All-Pro Tristan Wirfs. That's gonna be big, especially going up against a Rams D line that is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
So those are the concerns I have for Tampa Bay. But
I think I was gonna say it too. So I think I have to give the edge to the Rams because look, the both teams are talented. There's no question there. But I think with the momentum the Rams have, the team that they overcome the Cardinals it's a lot more momentum boosting than Tampa Bay being the Eagles because there's a lot more hype around. Right. And with the injuries that Buccaneers have, I think there's just more going in favor towards the directions of the Rams. So I do think the Rams will take this game.
Can I just say it's almost like 2 years now, and it's still hard to see Tom Brady in a Buccaneers jersey, and especially going forward, it's like he's still playing at this level of absolute ridiculousness. It's just he really is something of a
Daria. I've had to endure all these years of having to see Brady beat teams. You want to do it for 2 years, all right?
I'm joining you guys.
Yeah.
No, but look. In all seriousness, this is a tough one. It is a good game, to be honest. It's a really great game for Sunday, and both teams are coming off really, in a sense, hot. I think the Tampa Bay team is a bit more banged up, as you said. We don't know about Godwin, we don't know about Fournette, their offensive line. I do think, though, this Rams team has been incredibly impressive this season, as we mentioned in the Arizona overview of it. I think, this being in Tampa is a little bit, different. It's going to be a different atmosphere, for the Rams. And I don't know how it's going to be as a game. It's weird. It's a tough one, really. I want to say, because as I said, my Super Bowl favorites are the Rams. But the Buccaneers are just such a clutch team. These are the type of situations and games that they really come out of it the stronger against your opposition. And, as I said, you got Tom Brady on your team. Anything can really happen. You really are always going to be in a competitive race against him. And I do think the Rams will come out of this actually with the win, but I do think once again it's going to be a very close game, and I do think it's going to be a very entertaining one for that matter. I think Stafford has proved to be one of the, as I said, the most consistent QB in the league, in my opinion. Whatever you'll say about it in these previous years, this has been one of his better years as a player. And, when you have a player like Cooper Kupp scoring as much as he is, and you have Odell Beckham really showing up as he is, I think that really proves that this is a real good contest. This is the type of matchup that you would want to see in the playoffs. And going forward, I do think the Rams will come out of it, but I do think it's going to be a close one and yet a very entertaining one.
And that was a pretty hot Matthew Stafford take when Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Tom Brady, a few others, Josh Allen exists. Bold statement to say the most consistent quarterback in the NFL. Bold, but I'm with the Rams. I watched that game. That defense is that good. And Jalen Ramsey's going to be able to cover Mike Evans. If Godwin isn't playing, I do think it's a huge concern for weapons for Tom Brady. How big of an impact can Gronk have? He's not that same level of a tight end. He's still great and he'll still make, big catches. He's not at that, same level where he can do it, time and time and again in the same game when you need the most, especially against that Rams. Such a good defense. It's going to come down to Matt Stafford versus Tampa Bay's defense against Tom Brady versus the Rams defense. I give the edge to the Rams. That's all I can say. I just think they're just a little bit better right now. And something tells me that the Rams are going to win that game. All I'll say. But on to the final one, a little AFC Championship rematch from last year, the Bills versus Chiefs. Another big game. The Sunday slate's going to be pretty wild, finishing off with the Bills versus Chiefs. How's that one going to go?
This is a hard game. This is to me, honest, this might arguably be even harder to choose between than the Rams and Buccaneers because these are two amazing offenses, and it's really gonna come down to really which offense outscores the other. Because watching both games, there really is no stopping the Bills and Chiefs because both teams last week, mind you, they went up against good defenses. Like Patriots, no, are they the perfect defense? No, but they have proven to be a good defense for most of the season. And I don't think even last week's game was a representation of like the talent that they have on defense. But either way, the Bills ran over them. And likewise, the Chiefs did the same to the Steelers. I think I'm going to give the edge to the Chiefs because what I can imagine is Bills kind of getting on early and hanging in early and kind of having control for a good chunk of the game. But I could also see the Chiefs, heating up in the second half and then kind of taking over because that is something that we've seen Mahomes do. If we ever see the Chiefs struggle early in the game, that's not going to be any indication of how the game will end because that's not what the offense does. The offense, not only Mahomes is a great quarterback, but he has so many weapons to work with, and likewise, Josh Allen is a great quarterback too. But I think just the amount of talent on the offenses alone, I have to lean more to Chiefs. I think the Bills do have the edge on defense, but I just think that without defense won't be enough to contain Kansas City offense. So I'm going to give a slight edge to Chiefs, but this will be a great game.
Before you give a prediction, I give the slight edge to the Bills. I believe in them a little bit more, and I'm not 100% sold on the Chiefs defense. If Josh Allen could march on them, I give the edge to the Bills in this one. The gut feeling. I like both teams, both great teams. Something about the Bills this year. I just think they've been waiting for this opportunity. I think they'll win. That's all I'll say. I think they'll win.
Evan, this isn't usual, but I agree completely with you. I do think the Bills are going to win this game. And to be honest with you, I have not been convinced of Kansas City this season. I know it's an Arrowhead. There's a lot of signs pointing towards them.
For
and
sure.
you have Mahomes, of course. You have a quality quarterback, but there's something about this Bills team, especially the way they played against that Patriots team. I know it's a one game, but the way they've been even playing in the second half of this regular season, they look like a team that really wants to prove a point. And I think that this is the game that Josh Allen really shows it, the type of quarterback that he really is, going against an opposition, which I think will be evenly, in a sense, evenly matched. Because let's be fair, these are, in my personal opinion, these are the two most talented teams in the AFC, and at least this season.
Yeah, for sure.
So going forward, I think that the Bills showed something against the Patriots that I don't think I've ever seen before. I don't think the league has seen before. And going into Arrowhead, they're not. I would say the Chiefs are favorites, but to me, I think the Bills have enough to come out of this game and win it. And especially this is a rematch of last season. There's a different feeling in Buffalo, and the way this Bills team has been kind of organized and kind of coached to become this more stronger and not any more inexperienced team. They have been here before, right? This is not the first time, and I think
big factor.
it's a big factor for this particular game. And I think that this is the day that the Bills do win it. Do I want them to win? Personally, no. I want the Chiefs to win after that last. But I can, you know what? I generally do believe the Bills are going to win this game.
Yeah, I
There
don't
you have
completely
it.
disagree
Oh.
with you guys because the point make it fair. And look, like I said, it's going to be a
But
close
the Chiefs
game.
are a different animal, and it could happen. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
You'll have a 50-50 split.
I think
yeah.
the concern we have with the Chiefs was very much early in the season. I think they really have shied away from that in that second half, and because they really had momentum carrying them. I think when the Chiefs are heated up, I can't see them losing. But no, it's fair though because the Bills, like we said, the Bills and Chiefs, like you said, Dara, these are the two best teams in the AFC, like hands down. The talent, like honestly, it's kind of unmatched from a pure talent standpoint.
All I know is we will find out what happens this weekend during the divisional round. Come back next week. We will break everything down as well as previewing the championship games. It should be a great weekend. If you're a football fan, go out and enjoy it, and we will see you guys next week.